Ambergris Caye is the largest island on the northeastern seaboard of Belize. Having crossed the border from Guatemala, we took a short flight to the island's airport at San Pedro. From the airport, we were transferred to the quay, and then by boat 5 miles up the coast to our accommodation at the gorgeous Matachica Resort. Matachica is one of the more luxurious and expensive hotels on the quay. This wasn't planned to be a birding location, but as it turned out, the local area was very good for birds. The beach and shallow tide line in front of the hotel enticed a few wading birds. A little blue heron was one of the more regular visitors. As was an American great egret, with the orange bill and green lores of breeding plumage, whereas this willet only flew in one afternoon. Unlike the herons, it was still in non-breeding plumage. Its large size and pale breast suggested it was a Western race individual. Overhead, royal terns would often pass by. White foreheads showed that, as with the willet, they were still in non-breeding plumage. The chance of a free meal attracted brown pelicans to the jetty. Others were happy to fish for themselves. The adults have a striking multicoloured head pattern. Juveniles, by contrast, are a rather dull pale brown on head and body. The pelicans were sometimes joined by an immature double-crested cormorant. As with the young pelicans, it lacked any form of elaborate plumage. Piratic, magnificent frigabirds were never far away. As they circled the jetty, they provided a good opportunity to consider their various plumage types, although interestingly, there were no adult females. There were, however, all black adult males with their inflatable red throat pouch. Sub-adult males with distinctive mottling on their underparts. And white-headed juveniles. They have two distinct phases of molt. The younger first phase birds have all white breast and belly. Whereas their second juvenile phase involves dark blotches on the underparts. The mangrove-dominated habitat backing onto the shoreline was also productive. A male golden-fronted woodpecker often showed well. Of course, on this race, the patch above the bill is red rather than golden-coloured. It was often seen feeding on mangrove fruits, and sometimes in the same tree as a black catbird. These are endemic to the Yucatan Peninsula, northern Guatemala, and here in northern Belize. They generally showed well here, particularly when compared to other endemics present like the Yucatan vireo and Yucatan flycatcher, which failed to perform for the camera. Black catbirds are the only members of their genus and part of the family that includes thrashers and mockingbirds. Grey catbirds were also here, although they are winter visitors from North America. They are actually a different genus to the black catbird, but from the same family. And completing that family presence were tropical mockingbirds, rather common in mangroves and scrub around the hotel. Common tyrant fly catchers were great kiskadees. Social flycatchers, and tropical kingbirds. Although not located, the very similar Couch's kingbird also occurs here. They're best separated by call, but also, unlike this tropical kingbird, Couches have no greenish tinge to the breast, and the upper parts are brighter. Wherever there were fruiting or flowering trees, Orioles were much in evidence. Two species were involved. Here a yellow-mantled male orange oriole, and the eastern form of hooded oriole, which in the case of the male here has a black mantle. Female orange orioles can be quite variable, but are generally olive-toned and sometimes with streaking on the mantle. The brighter males are yellow-bodied, with a hint of orange around the black face and throat. Despite their names, the hooded orioles here actually look more orange. Unlike the orioles, a male black-headed trogon proved much more unobtrusive. Myrtle Warblers were abundant in an open area on the northern perimeter of the hotel, mostly foraging on the ground. They breed across northern North America, from New England to Alaska, and are often lumped together with the more westerly Audubon's warbler under the banner of yellow-rumped warbler. Both forms are most easily separated in breeding plumage, but even in winter myrtles differ, showing a whiter throat, pale supercilium, contrasting darker ear coverts, and more streaking on the breast. There is, however, a large intergrade zone supporting the single species theory. Interestingly, the vast majority here were females, generally brown washed in non-breeding plumage, but with bright yellow on the upper flanks and blackish streaking below. or immatures, which looked obviously paler overall. Some brighter individuals may have been young males, but at this time of year it's usually hard to tell. Although this individual did show typical male upper tail covert and white tail spot patterning. A female type magnolia warbler was also briefly seen here. And palm warblers also liked this area, particularly where rotting seaweed had been deposited after having been cleared off the beach. When seen well, the stripy head pattern is distinctive, as is the Rufus crown, which becomes more extensive with the development of breeding plumage. Sparrow-sized common ground doves pick their way across the sandier surfaces. Both sexes have dark brown spots on the wings and scaly head and breast, but whilst the females are generally pale brown, the males have a pinkish suffusion across the breast and forewing. The much larger white-winged doves were warier and more often seen on overhead wires. Although one pair did show well close to the main road, joined briefly by a female great-tailed grackle. Where the grass was lusher, a female or possibly subadult male bronzed cowbird foraged on the ground. Strangely, it had an anomalous white feather protruding from its right wing. Scanning these more open areas revealed a single grey hawk and an occasional common black hawk, probably surveying the ground here for meal-sized reptiles. The large spiny-tailed iguanas basking in the sun were presumably a bit too big. Brown basilisks were probably more likely on the menu, particularly the smaller juveniles. Dawn would usually launch a breezy start to the day. A good time to visit the more sheltered mangrove lagoons across the road from the hotel. Host to a splendid range of waterbirds. Most were common enough, such as this American great egret, but were a pleasure to see so well. With the egret were plenty of white ibis. There was, however, just a single tricoloured heron, plus a lone little blue heron, an immature, molting into adult plumage. And there was also just the one roseate spoonbill. When there was no local traffic, it would sometimes feed very close to the road, nevertheless rather warily. More unexpected was this wood stork. It could be aged as a second-year immature, thanks to the brownish neck and black face. Its feeding action involved holding its open bill in the water and then disturbing the mud with its feet. Green herons either ambush or stalk their prey. Having made its way down from the mangroves, this adult kept to the edge, whereas this immature, aged by having white fringes on the wing coverts and a streaked neck, was happy to venture out into the open. Waders present included resident birds like this stately black-necked stilt. But mainly those that winter here and breed in North America, such as this spotted sandpiper. At this time of year, the distinctive spotted underparts are lacking. Also killdeers. This one is probably a female, given the brownish facial mask. And with their presence probably dictated by tidal conditions on the shoreline, flocks of least sandpipers that would sometimes appear on roadside pools. Most were beginning to develop the rufous tones of breeding plumage. Belted kingfishers are another winter visitor to the mangrove lagoons. A lack of any rufous on the flanks show this one to be a male. A thicket by the utility compound at the back of the hotel proved to be a magnet for more wintering North American warblers. Yellow warblers seem to prefer the outer fringes. Interestingly, unlike the Myrtle Warblers, the majority were males, with chestnut red streaking on the breast. Some ventured to where an overflow had created a small swamp. Here they joined a male common yellowthroat. Grey-crowned yellowthroat is also possible here, but that species has restricted black on the face and is much greyer across the crown and forehead. There was also this Tennessee warbler, often a difficult species to see well, but this one proved fairly cooperative. A male black and white warbler, and American redstarts. Females were most obvious. There was also this first year, probably a male, plus a fine adult male. Lower down there were northern water thrushes. An extensive yellow wash across the underparts of this individual ruled out the possibility of it being a Louisiana water thrush. And ovenbirds, a rather peculiar American wood warbler and the only member of its genus. Also seen here was a yellow-billed cacique, and best of all, a foraging rufous-necked woodrail. Whilst not globally threatened, they are very scarce across their range in Central and Northern South America. As such, they are rarely seen this well. The beaches at Ambergris Caye are protected from the Caribbean Sea by an offshore reef system, now considered to be the largest in the world. Trips to the reef can be organised at the hotel, and one popular destination is Shark Ray Alley. Here, nurse sharks, southern stingrays, and a variety of fish come to be fed. Local fishermen used to come here to clean their catches, and the sharks and rays soon recognised a regular food source. Now, tourists come to watch them, and snorkelers and divers to swim with them and the blue tangs, horse-eyed jacks, barjacks, and Bermuda chubs. The nurse sharks are harmless, adapted to feeding on the sea floor. As are the stingrays, however they carry the risk of a sting in the tail. A different ray seen briefly looked to be a mobular ray. Other fish included a dog snapper, schools of grunts, which included smallmouth and blue striped grunts. A balloonfish, a buffalo trunkfish, a grey angelfish, blue-headed wrasse, and banded butterfly fish. Plus the preponderance of seagrass attracted this fabulous green turtle. The main settlement on the quay is San Pedro, which lies at the southern end, with streets full of the golf carts that tourists use to travel around. The wind was picking up over the promenade, where many of the gulls and terns seen up and down the coast were taking a rest. They included sandwich terns, which hadn't been seen up at Matachica, along with larger royal terns. The white crown will become all black for a brief period in the breeding season. And laughing gulls, here a winter-plumaged adult, plus duskier immatures now in their second calendar year. In flight, this duskier plumage was equally apparent. Some of the adults had acquired the black hood of breeding plumage. There were also more brown pelicans here, and double-crested cormorants, an immature at the front and a blacker-looking adult behind. On some of the piers were roosting ruddy turnstones. And on the beach, a Verdeman's heron. Despite the name, this is an unusual intermediate morph between the commoner dark and rarer white forms of the great blue heron. On the west side of town, a melee of magnificent frigatebirds, laughing gulls and brown pelicans were attracted to the return of a fishing boat to one of the mangrove lagoon quaysides. San Pedro was of course popular at night too. That was only a short trip back from the quay to Matachica. The next morning the wind had abated, but unfortunately it was now time to leave and begin our journey back to the UK.